Again, asset class diversification means that your portfolio transcends diversification by name only. But it also includes diversification by style. Again, by name, I'm referring to the name of the individual stocks in a portfolio, such as Walmart or Apple Computer. By style, I'm referring to the size or what we call capitalization of the stock within a portfolio. For example, large value or mid growth or small value. Now, you want to have name and style diversification in a portfolio. That's how you get asset class diversification, because companies come in all sizes: small, medium, and large, value and growth, okay? Industries, technology, healthcare, consumer durables, various types of corporations and industries represented in your portfolio. Now, each asset classification is important because they tend to perform differently throughout an economic cycle. That's key. Let's illustrate with the following slide. Let's illustrate this point, how asset classifications perform differently throughout various economic cycles. This slide displays two broad columns. On your left is the asset class column, and on your right is the calendar year column. We can associate the economic cycle with the calendar years column. You may be able to recall how the U.S. bond asset classes performed perhaps in 1994 versus the way it is performing today in the year 2009. Take a look also at an asset class like real estate. Ask yourself this: what is the difference about real estate as an asset class in terms of how it performed in the year 2001 versus today in 2009? Since this is the Wealth and Wisdom Show, I want to leave you with a nugget of discernment that I hope will aid you in making wise and well-informed decisions about your investments going forward. Okay, come back. Please, do not be deceived by thinking that just because a widely followed market index is performing in a certain way, that the same must also be true for every market represented in the United States economy. There are various indices out there. We tend to hear of only three: Dow, S&P, NASDAQ, but there are so many more. So if someone says the market's up, your response should be, well, which part of the market? Okay, and don't just assume that the market is up across the board, because those three indices, which primarily comprise large company stocks, happens to be performing up or down in a given day. Companies represented by various sectors of our economy, they tend to perform differently from one another. We know that. So, for example, the healthcare sector, it will perform differently than the financial sector. It has to. And consumer non-durables will perform differently than companies related to the technology sector. Your portfolio, therefore, should be comprised of more than what may happen to be trading on the NASDAQ or S&P. In other words, if the NASDAQ or S&P is comprised primarily of large caps, your portfolio should include some of that, but not be comprised primarily of large caps. Otherwise, you're going to have the same performance in your portfolio as those large indices. Now, keep in mind, the S&P and the NASDAQ and the Dow, they're all large caps. S&P is 500 of the largest companies in America. Dow, comprised of 30 large industrial stocks. So again, don't be surprised if you have what we call positive correlation. You think you're diversified, but you're not, because when you peel back the onion, you see a lot of large company stocks in your portfolio. Okay? If this is the case, then I want you to have if this is the case, then you have yet to achieve true diversification. In other words, if you're diversified in name only, but not in style, then you haven't achieved true diversification within your portfolio. And like we say on Wealth and Wisdom, it is wise to asset class diversify. Well, I hope that was helpful for you. And beginning to understand how a portfolio ought to be diversified, not just in name only, but also in style, by sectors, by the size of the corporation, by the name of the corporation, not just according to one indice, such as the NASDAQ, the Dow, the S&P. Now remember, if you have any questions that you'd like for us to answer here on the show, live on the show, then feel free to visit our website, which you'll see at the end of this show when the credits run. And there you'll find our contact information. We'll be happy to field your questions and answer your questions here on Wealth and Wisdom for you. As we always say, we'll leave you with our favorite quote from Scripture, Proverbs 16:16, spoken by none other than a very wealthy and very wise man, King Solomon himself. It says, "Get wisdom. It's worth more than money. Choose insight over income every time." Again, get wisdom is worth more than money. Choose insight over income every time. Until next time, I'm Martin A. Smith. Thank you for joining me, and have a great day.